Do you or know have anything in them about a recruiting service?
2, 1. And we're on.
Test. Welcome, Fastpitch Huddle fans. We're back. It's been several weeks since the last time we were live, so we are back live tonight with some good information. It's great to be back on this warm January 28th night as the cold chill goes through the Midwest and Central Illinois and beyond. So, Coach DP here alongside with Coach Christie and Coach Nolte.
Glad to be here.
Good to see everybody again.
So we're kind of just take a little bit of time so people can join in. And
tonight we're talking recruiting. This is a
good topic.
Good topic, yeah.
For this time of year.
That's right.
Get everybody going.
So if you have any questions throughout this, make sure you shoot them at us, and we'll try to get to them. And if we don't get to them tonight, we'll probably be talking about this for a few weeks. So a lot to cover, a lot to talk about, a lot going on in the sport right now. So it should be a fun topic.
Welcome,
Hi, Coach
Bridget
Tucker.
Belt.
Bridget Belt, Coach Tucker. Give them a few more minutes.
I didn't adjust Coach Christie's camera earlier.
Ooh.
Let's see where
That was a little
DP's
close
is.
up.
Yeah. Extreme close up. Oh, that's KP. There's DP at. There he is.
When you log on, give us a little shout. Let us know where you're watching from or where you're coming to us from, so we know where everybody's at.
All right.
So this is a topic tonight, and like Coach Christie said, we'll probably be talking about for several weeks. Just the recruiting process in general, and like we always say with the information we bring, the information that we share, it doesn't make it the only way. It doesn't mean it's the only way to do things. It's from our research and our experiences. It's kind of some of the information that seems to work well. So we'll kind of get started in here now on, and like Coach Christie said, we're talking about recruiting and the recruiting process. And, I guess we could start with when does this process really begin for young athletes? And I think the answer to that is different depending on what the student athlete is really looking for. Some student athletes kind of have an idea of what they're looking for very early on, whereas others, they aren't really sure what they want to do, what they want to study when they're a senior in high school. And that, there's some people like us that still don't know what we really want to do. That's what I always say. So the recruiting process is very different depending on the student athlete and the level they're looking to play, along with where they're looking to go to school and what they're looking to study. So I don't think that you can really start. I mean, you could definitely start too early, but I think that if you're in middle school or freshman in high school, I think it's a good idea to go to a few camps that are actually at college campuses. It doesn't matter what level, but if you think that you might have an interest in possibly playing at a school like that, it certainly helps to get seen. I mean, we certainly have had kids going to camps in colleges in our area from a very young age. And yes, these camps are definitely money makers for colleges, but they also give the coaches a chance to get to know the athlete from a young age and just get to work with them and get to feel out their personality.
Mm-hmm. Plus, a lot of the times it makes the kid more comfortable if they're starting to attend those camps.
That experience.
It gives them a good experience, right. That when they get older and it becomes a little bit more,
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Then they're ready to go.
The other thing too, I think, they need to understand is, well, they need to figure out if that's really what they want. So going to games, watching games on TV, these kids need to make sure that they really know what college softball is about. And you have some that say they want to play and they've maybe never seen a college game. They don't, know how the coaches are, what to expect, those kinds of things. So you need to get out there and get to see some of that stuff. With the new recruiting rules, they say, they can't get a kid to commit until they're after September 1st, their junior year. So that doesn't mean that the coaches aren't watching. The higher level schools are watching those kids at 14U, and they're keeping tabs on those kids to see how they grow and how they developed. So that doesn't mean that process hasn't started, but is that you?
No.
They're but those kids can't really talk to the coaches and get deep into that process until their junior year. So
even from, let's say your daughter's a 7th or 8th grader, even from that standpoint, going to those camps might let them know that they don't want to go to that school also, or they don't want to play for that coach, or the philosophy doesn't work. So they certainly don't need to be making decisions at that young of age. There's a lot of development to do, but it definitely doesn't hurt to get in front of a few of them. I don't say at that age you need to be going to 10 on-site college camps. There's also a lot of camps that are good where you get to be in front of multiple coaches at one camp. The interaction is going to be a little different there. But
or even just the camps where you can be evaluated. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, but just so you know where you're at and how to compare yourself to other athletes and give yourself an idea of what you need to work on. So, all right, well, let's dig in here. So we're talking about college recruiting, and there are different types of schools and levels out there for everybody. And just so you have an idea, kind of how many schools are out there, what opportunities there are for kids. There's a lot of softball players playing softball right now. It's a booming sport. But at the NCAA Division I level, there's 286 schools. And that's an average of 21 players per team. And they're limited to 12 scholarships a year if they're fully funded. So that's NCAA Division I. Okay, lots of opportunities out there, but there's a lot of kids playing softball. And they're looking for something special. So you got Division II. Okay, NCAA Division II. There's 264 schools, and on average they have about 7.2 scholarships a year if they're fully funded as well. The roster size there usually an average of 20 players. Okay, NCAA Division III. They have 392 approximate schools, and they can't offer any athletic money, so it's all academic based. And their average roster size is about 18. You have NAIA schools. Those are 4-year schools as well. 201 softball schools, 10 scholarships per year if fully funded, and their average roster size is 21. Some of those schools have a JV and a varsity, okay, and they can carry multiple rosters. We have a school nearby that carries about 40-something kids, right? NAIA, so there's lots of opportunities there. NJCAA Division I, there's 159 schools. Maximum scholarships are 24 if they're fully funded. Average roster size, 17. They can provide tuition, fees, books, and housing, just so you understand the difference there with Division I, Division II, Division III. And that's the same as at the higher levels. NJCAA Division II, there's 141 schools. Maximum number of scholarships is 24. Again, that's if they're fully funded. And, average roster size about 17. They can cover tuition and fees and some books depending on funding. Then you have NJCAA Division III, and there's 77 schools, no athletic scholarships. It's all academic based, again, and the average roster size is 17. So just to give you an idea of how many schools are out there, and how many scholarships they have to divide up to form those teams.
That's approximately 30,000 college softball players all out there playing the game of softball with less than 15,000 total athletic scholarships available. Mm-hmm. So that can kind of give you an idea of what's out there.
All right. So when you're starting this recruiting process, I guess the first thing that I think everyone needs to understand is just to be patient. Okay, you have to be proactive. You've got to go after what you want, but you also need to understand that things are going to happen for different kids at different times, and it's all about when you're ready, and when those opportunities come up, you can jump on them. But be patient and understand that it's going to happen at different times for different kids. I think sometimes we get a little too anxious when kids around us are getting recruited, or they're signing and getting committed, and we're thinking, well, if they're getting recruited, how come I'm not? Well, there's lots of different reasons for that. Maybe they're a different position. From what we've seen, it seems like pitchers can go first and pitchers can go last. They're important. They're an important part of a team, but there's always coaches and schools out there looking for pitchers. So I would say,
Yeah.
There's a good question that just came in. How do you get players and parents to be realistic with what level their kid can play at? And I would say a lot of that comes from a little bit of trust. These players playing with an organization that has a good history of kids moving on from the organization. But at the same time, it's always been our philosophy where we will kind of let the players know a little bit about where we see them fitting in at, but at the same time, depending on what age they're at, we're not going to eliminate anything for them. They got to be realistic, but also, kids develop at different times throughout their career. So just because a player might not look like a Division I player as a sophomore doesn't mean as a senior they won't be. There's some that you probably know, but there's also some big development that can happen there, and as we'll get into a little further, there's things changing every day at the highest levels. So there's always spots opening up. Now that said, there's some kids out there that we coach and they have their mindset that they want to go to a junior college for the academic side, or they want to go to this Division II or this Division III. That's where their parents went. And when they get that narrowed down a little bit, it's certainly, it's good and bad, I guess. It narrows down the options, but certainly lets you know what to go after. So
yeah, that's a great question, JJ. I think the very first step that a family needs to take when they're starting the recruiting process is just step back and take a realistic make a realistic evaluation of your kid. And if you can't do that unbiasedly, then you need to go somewhere where you can get an evaluation of your kid, whether it's a tryout where you get numbers back or feedback from that tryout, or there's camps and clinics out there that can give you numbers and they can show you averages. Here's what a really good score is, here's what an average score, and here's where your kid ranks. Now, numbers don't always mean everything.
No.
There's a lot of intangibles that coaches look for and things like that, but you can kind of get an idea of where those kids are going to fit in, knowing what college coaches are looking for at different levels. So I think that's a really good first step, is just making sure that you have a realistic evaluation of your athlete, so you kind of have an idea of where they might be a good fit.
What Coach was talking here, one of our past players just sent me a text that played at the college level, and it's so true. It gets very nerve-wracking for the families and the players as the student athlete gets a little bit older. And her comment was, just make sure and mention how important it is to stay calm, because when it's meant to be, it'll happen. Now, what we always tell our players is, yes, stay calm, but also stay proactive. Okay, anything you want in life, you got to go after. You can't sit back and wait for it to happen. At the same time, as long as you're proactive and you do all the right steps, opportunities will be there. What level those opportunities come, who knows? But obviously we may be a little biased. We coach at the junior college level, but that's a great step if someone really wants to play at the highest level possible. You can go to the junior college level for 1 or 2 years and still get that opportunity.
Give yourself more time to develop.
Yeah, well, you were talking earlier about how some athletes they develop at different rates.
Right.
Well, what people have to remember, a girl might mature physically a little quick,
Absolutely.
but athletically they don't mature until their 20s or
Right.
so.
Oh,
There's always room for more potential, more growth. So
There's a good question here from William. Is there a certain number of schools you recommend a recruit visit before they make a decision, I'm assuming? And I would say you just visit as many schools as you can possibly visit. Obviously, there's a limited amount of official visits you can take, but there's no
take as
number of unofficial visits, that you're limited to. So in order to make a informed, good decision, I feel like you need things to compare it to. And a lot of times what we've seen is the first school that a kid goes to, it's the one. And then we say, okay, let's just check out in our school. So they go to our school, and that one's the one. It's like the last one that you go to. But once you sit down and take a look at all the pros and cons of each school, that really helps you weigh out what might be the better fit for you. So I'd say take as many visits as you can, and really take advantage of those opportunities to find out everything you can about those schools, and then create a pros and cons list at home. And as you're marking these things down on your list, you're going to be able to eliminate schools based off of things that you know that you want. And we'll kind of get into some other steps that I think you need to take before you start visiting these schools. I think one important thing that you need to do is make sure that your kid's playing on a team or an organization that's going to continue to develop them as people and players, and a team that's going to challenge them and teach them how to compete. I think that's one of the biggest challenges in softball today is kids jump in teams before they're pushed as far as they can, and a lot of times it's because they don't want to sit back and wait for that opportunity to compete for a spot. They just want that spot given to them, and at the college level, you're going to compete every single day. You're competing every day you step on that field for one opportunity to hit or one opportunity to pitch, and every year that gets tougher and tougher because coach is bringing in that next big thing. They're bringing in new freshmen that they're trying to take your spot, or a transfer kid that's trying to take your spot. So you have to learn to compete at a young age, and be okay with not being the best, because if you're not the best, then you have work to do and you've got to compete to get to that spot. And if you just say, I don't want to earn that spot, I'm going to go somewhere else where I can have it easier, then you're not teaching yourself anything and you're not making yourself a better player.
The other thing is, if you're in an organization that requires you to compete for those spots, then guess what? You're probably in an organization that's playing at a higher level also. And, I'm not suggesting that you have to be in an organization that requires you to travel all across the country. But at the same time, the more opportunities you get to play in front of coaches, the more opportunities you're going to have. And so, the higher programs, the tough part about travel softball, and, I don't want to get off topic too much, is the expense. So because the expense is so high, kids expect to play. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. Everybody gets an opportunity to play, at least in our organization. But it doesn't mean everybody gets equal time. It's it's not at our level. There's not a participation organization. It's you're going to get opportunities, but we've even had players that when they were in 8th grade or freshmen, they weren't in that starting lineup, and then they keep working hard because they see what they want, and organizations like the one we coach in will give kids opportunities to work hard and to push themselves and to get better. And the next year, they're getting in that role. And sometimes the hard thing for some players and parents to understand is maybe when that player is a freshman, it's not that you don't want them to be seen in front of some of these coaches, but they're not quite ready. And you can tell with their work ethic and their commitment that they're going to be more ready 6 months later or 9 months later or 12 months later. So it is important to try to put the players in the best possible position to be successful as well. So, yeah. And again, that takes trusting. It comes down to trusting and knowing that you're in an organization that's in it for the right reason. And, that's hard to know that always, but there's a lot of good ones out there. And I think that's,
do you think, one question I've been asked before, do you think they can kind of go to those upper level tournaments too soon? Like, like even 14s, even though
Confidence
you
if it's
can't,
too soon.
you know.
I mean, you need to have a mix, I think, at the 14U level because
They
you
need to
want
see
your
what's out
players-
there first.
Yeah, you want them to see what's out there so they know what they're working towards. But then at the same time, you want their confidence level to not get completely dashed. And I see on here someone saying showcases are great, but you have to be in super pools. That's where the coaches are. And I do agree with, to a certain extent, but I also disagree in some ways. One thing that I will tell you is we've been in super pools a lot, but we've not been in super pools. And, just this fall, we let things ride out with our team as they would, and we were in 2 different tournaments in super pools. And the first tournament we were in super pool, we didn't require one little thing from our student athletes that we did the second one, okay? And when I say we were at 2 showcases, we were at 2 showcases that probably had 250 coaches each at them. And the first tournament we played in front of maybe 12, and we were in the super pool. We played against the Beverly Bandits. We played against, some really good teams.
Georgia Impact, some of those.
And so we played in front of maybe 12 coaches. The second tournament, we played in front of 150 coaches in one weekend, or maybe 100. I don't remember now. And the one little difference in those 2 tournaments, same game times roughly, playing against the same level of competition, we required every one of our players to email 10 coaches before the second tournament. And, in reality, you shouldn't have to require that if you're a coach, but at the same time, some of the student athletes don't know that they need to be doing that. Now, we do that for all of our teams before every tournament, but it's different whenever coaches are getting one email from the director of the organization, because now you've got 14 kids, each sending out 10 emails, they're overlapping, and all of a sudden certain coaches are getting hit with emails from, 4, 5, 6 different players letting them know their game times.
Mm-hmm.
And, so there's things like that regardless of whether you're on the main field or not, you ask the coach to come watch you. If you're with a good organization, that helps. If you've been to their camp prior to that, that helps. Student athlete sends emails, and then at some point we'll get to, okay, what do we put in this email?
Right.
But certainly, whether it's a showcase or not, invite the coaches to come watch you, okay? Because, there's how many athletes playing, and it's not typically, a coach doesn't find an athlete by accident very often, okay? Most of the time they have a game plan. When a coach is going to a tournament and there's 15 fields, they don't just stumble up and walk and say, oh, I want to watch this game just because.
Just see if there's any good athletes on this field.
So now we also do some things to try, if your team's doing a certain warm-up, maybe you can turn a coach's head when they're walking by and things like that. So, certainly you can get attention, but definitely be proactive. And, the part about coaches being at super pools, fields, the part about that I agree with, if you're playing against the best competition, you're more apt to play in front of
more coaches.
Coach Murphy from Alabama just because he's there watching the Georgia Impact, not because he came to watch
Me? No.
our team. Yeah. So, and that happens
Coach Nolte has
a
a
lot
crush
as well.
on him.
So,
JD, we'll get to some of the recruiting tools here in a little bit. I promise we'll cover that. And then Kelly Andrews, I just wanted to address your comment. You're exactly right. When a kid knows, when they've been to the right school, they know. What we always tell kids is once they've been on a few visits and when they think that they know, we tell them to call us and tell us, okay? And then we tell them to sleep on it. Don't tell anybody else. You maybe tell your parents, obviously, and tell one other person, then sleep on it. And then the next day, if you wake up and you know that 100% is the school that you want to be at, then you know that you're right.
That's right.
If you have any questions about it, then we say take your time, wait a little bit longer. So some good stuff there. So let's get back into. Go ahead.
once that student athlete does make that decision about where they're going, if you want to really do the right thing, make sure that you have your athlete call any of the other schools that showed extreme interest. Not everyone that they went on necessarily just went and visited the school, but if they were getting interest or an offer from any other school, they really need to call that coach so that coach hears it from them before they go crazy on social media and all that good stuff too.
We call that recruiting etiquette 101. We'll talk about that a little bit later too.
And a lot of these little things, it's just a respect thing for the student athlete, but it also helps the organization they're playing for. When that student athlete does that, it lets those coaches at those other schools know that they're recruiting from a good organization.
Right.
So
I had a kid text me today. She was all excited, and I can't wait to post. And I said, okay, I'm going to get on and I'll post on Facebook right now. And she goes, oh, wait a minute, I need to make a phone call first.
Yeah.
So
I know a couple of our players are watching right now. It's not an easy phone call because a lot of these athletes, they want to please people, and they know when they're calling to tell a coach they're not coming, it's not easy. But it's a good life experience. Just one of those life lessons that comes out of the game of softball, one of the many. So,
one other thing I think is important to have in the recruiting process is an advocate for your players. So if you know you're on a team where the coach is going to do a lot of that recruiting work behind the scenes for you, then you're in a good spot. But some teams don't have that. So whether it's your hitting coach, your pitching coach, someone who has a little bit of clout in the softball community, you need people like that be out there putting in good word for you or spreading your name around. Just being an advocate for your player. That's really important, and the more of those you have in your corner, the better. So that's one thing. So when you're ready to start the recruiting process, there's a few things you need to ask your athlete, okay? Some of those things might be, and I tell our kids to get a notebook and write some of the stuff down and keep track of it. Get a folder, whatever it is. You got to stay organized. But one of the questions you ask them is, how far away do you want to be from home? Some kids want to get as far away as they can. They want a different experience. It might be
great to, live up here in Illinois and want to play down in Alabama, but man, that's a long drive.
It is. So you got to think about those things. Do you want to be able to drive home on a weekend to see your family? And do you want them to be able to come and watch you play? If you're super far away and they got to jump on a plane to come and see you play those games that are in your conference, then, that's something you have to think about. Is that something you want? Can they afford to do that? So how far do you want to be away from home? What size of city do you want to be in? Do you think you can live in a big city like Chicago? Can you make it in a big city? Or do you want to be in a medium-sized town or city where you can get around and it's not going to take you an hour to get across town? You can find your way around on your own easily, or a small town, where.
Hey, but if you've ever been to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and nothing against Bowling Green, I like it. It takes you an hour to get across town. The traffic is bad.
One-lane roads.
Yeah. No.
So those are things that you got to think about: is how far away, what type of city do you want to be in,
what type of climate?
Yeah, what type of climate? If you're going to go far away, which direction do you want to go? Do you want to go north, south, east, west? And that might be different for everybody. There's probably Florida kids, believe it or not, that want to go north and play in Michigan.
They're crazy, but
Michigan or Wisconsin, things like that. So think about that as you start looking at schools. The size of the school, how many students, what class size are you going to feel comfortable in? Do you want to be in a lecture hall of 300 kids, or do you want to be in a classroom of 17 to 20 kids where you're going to know the professor and you're going to be able to ask for help and get that extra help that you need? What's comfortable for you? What type of school do you see yourself being at? Are you open to any possibility, or do you only have one school in your sights? There's D1, D2, JUCO, NAIA, Division III, all these different levels of school. You have to figure out what's realistic for you. Another thing to think about, some kids want to just be a part of that atmosphere and be a part of a team, and it doesn't matter where they're at, they're going to compete. Do you want to play right when you get there? Or do you want to sit for maybe a few years and try to earn your spot at a higher level, because it's your dream school? Some kids just want to go in and contribute and play right away. Obviously, I think that's all their goals, but at some levels, it's not going to be possible. Obviously, academics is the most important thing. Do they have your major? Do they have the studies that you want? Because ultimately, that's the goal. You're looking for that education. Softball might be 2 to 4 years of that time, but your education is for the rest of your life. So that's the most important thing. You got to make sure that they have everything you want.
Another thing you got to be thinking about, and this is tough for the student athletes, but as a family, is financially. Mm-hmm. Okay. a lot of these student athletes don't get full rides. So financially is the cost of the tuition at the school that you're looking to go at. Does that fit your family's what they can afford? And that's a tough thing. But do you want to end college with $100,000 in student loans, or do you want to come out of college without much debt? So it's just things everybody's got to think about.
Right. You're right, Kelly Andrews. There's some schools out there that limit the types of majors that you can study while you're there playing softball. At Parkland, we have career majors and transfer majors, and our programs. You can't do dental hygiene while you play softball at Parkland. It's just like nursing or some doctorate or I guess medical fields at Division I level. It's almost impossible for you to play softball while you're doing that, because you're traveling so much, you're missing classes, and there's labs and 4-hour classes that you're going to be missing that you can't get caught up in. So those are things you have to think about. Are you willing to take that extra year of schooling to play 4 years of softball, or are you going to look at something else or a different place that has that opportunity? Some schools will say education first, and some schools are you can't study this while you're here, so you're going to have to look somewhere else. How are your grades? Can you even get into that school that you're looking at? If you're looking at an Ivy League school and your ACT score is, not high enough to get in there, then you're obviously not going to be able to go there. So you've got to look at things like that. Grades are so important. Grades, GPA, ACT, you got to study. You got to make sure that you are on top of your game there, because coaches, that's one of the first things they're gonna look at, because they can give you academic money. They have more opportunities to get the kids they want when they can get a kid that gets academic money, and they don't have to spend use a whole scholarship or whatever on a kid. So make sure that you guys are really putting in time with your grades and your studies. Let's see, what else here?
Well, kind of, that's kind of a rundown of some of the things. There's many more things to be thinking about, but from a travel ball coach's perspective, it's always been our philosophy that we don't tell a player they can't play at that level.
Right.
They'll
always prove you wrong.
Yeah.
If you say that.
And as we touched on before, different players develop at different times. I think what's really important is to have a travel ball organization that's going to be an advocate for your player or student athlete, and that also has the means to play in front of the level of coaches that you would like for your daughter to play at. Our travel organization, we play Colorado, Atlanta, California, Florida. We go everywhere. But at the end of the day, most of our student athletes stay in the Midwest. I'd say most of them. Not all of them, but most of them do. So you got to make sure that what you're doing does make sense. Now, a lot of those Midwest schools follow us around a lot of those tournaments too. So, it's just making sure that you're in the right fit as far as the organization that you're playing for.
Right.
So.
Once you've answered some of those questions and kind of narrowed down the types of schools you want to look at, then we usually tell our kids to make a list. Okay, you're going to make a list of 10 realistic schools, 2 to 5 dream schools, and 2 to 5 fallback schools. And you're looking at schools at all the different ranges, types of schools. And then they need to start researching these schools. And so this is where it's important to take notes, keep a folder, okay, so you can keep all this stuff. If you're good on the computer, keep a file on your computer. But you want to get on those schools' websites and take a look at the graduation years of the players that play your position. Okay, see what year, all right, that coach is going to be recruiting someone who plays your position. Are they going to have a need for someone like you? Okay, make sure that they have your major at that school. As you're marking these on your list, you got to make sure they have everything that you need there. They need to match your educational needs. Research camps. Okay, are they affordable? Can you get to them? Try to get to some games. Okay, all these things are things that you got to research and make sure that that these schools are going to fit what you want. Okay,
And
so
I think it's important to research different types and different places of schools
Mm-hmm.
because I remember I didn't even know that school existed.
there's
You
so
know,
many out there
I
that
know,
don't even
they,
know.
They,
Yeah.
they don't know.
What's that?
They-
I've never heard of
I
that.
know,
That's a
I
Division
know,
One.
I know. Hey,
Yeah.
check out this one. You know.
Right.
So you really need to broaden your mind a little bit when it comes to the different schools
Right.
and stuff. So.
Definitely. You know, when you're looking at camps, you want to make sure that you can get to those camps, but also reach out ahead of time before you spend that money and make sure that they're recruiting your class or they have a need for that position. Otherwise, it's a fundraising tool for that coach.
Yeah, there's certainly a few things to do if you're going to go to a camp. Certainly, like Coach said, reach out in advance, make sure they know you're coming. It's just a heads up, so that coach might be looking for you. I would say right when you get there, before you even go, have a few things in your mind that you might want to ask the coach before or after camp, just to stand out. Maybe do some research on that coach's philosophy or some of their past records, different things like that. But then when you get to camp, don't be shy. You got to be outgoing. Even if it's not your nature, go up, shake the coach's hand. Make sure you thank them for having the camp. Just ways to stand out. Make sure you wear your team jersey. Let them know in advance what your number is, who you play for.
So, yeah, send an email before you go to camp. I think that's a good thing. Have your coach reach out to the coach.
Yeah, definitely let your travel ball coaches know that you're going to this camp. We certainly reach out to all of them, try to let them know in advance. And another thing, and this gets back to, I always say in sports, the guys have to play good, feel good, and the ladies have to feel good to play good. Okay, so whatever uniform that you're the most confident in.
The one that makes you look the biggest.
Yeah, whichever one makes you look the toughest. Wear that. Wear that uniform, stand out. Make sure you look professional,
Shirt's
tucked
tucked
in.
Yep.
And just make sure you're asking questions and you're proactive at the camp too. And that certainly helps. Be the first person to ask questions. Be the first person to demonstrate, volunteer if you know what you're doing for a drill. So,
But don't be afraid to speak up and jump out there and try something and fail. Okay, it's okay if you don't do it right. Those coaches are already impressed that you've raised your hand and you have the confidence to step up and try something. Okay, whether you do it right or wrong, or whether you answer a question right or wrong. Those coaches notice that when your hand's up in the air every single time, it shows confidence. That you're not afraid to take a risk, and coaches notice that.
JD just mentioned wear a uniform with your name on the back. I recommend that. Certainly at camps, and for any of you travel ball coaches organizations out there, I highly recommend it, at least for most of your uniforms. All of ours except for one set has a name on the back. And yes, it's true. We always tell our players you're playing for the name on the front, not the back. But at the same time, it's just one more thing that helps. As a coach that spent all last weekend recruiting, there's certain teams that I don't know this kid, and I go on their website. There's no website. I can't find them. That's another thing.
There's no recruiting profiles.
Playing for an organization that has a recruiting profile or has a website that, at least while I'm sitting there, with technology today, I'm sitting there watching games all weekend. I pull up my phone and, I want to know which player this is, and it just has a number on the back and there's nothing on the website. So, that stuff, it's marketing. That's what recruiting is marketing the student athletes. So make sure that you do everything in your favor. Put the odds in your favor to get noticed.
Mm-hmm. There's a few other things that you need to make sure you do when you're at a camp, and obviously one of the biggest things is sprint everywhere you go. Hustle, hustle, hustle. Hustle on and off the field. Be the first person in line. If you make a mistake, say, "Coach, can I get another one?" Things like that. Have some questions prepared, because a lot of times at these camps, they're going to have a little bit of a question and answer, time. A lot of them do, for parents, for players. And I think when you have questions prepared, it shows that you're interested, okay, and that you're taking this opportunity seriously. So ask questions, have those prepared. Make eye contact with the coach when you're talking. Don't look down at the ground when she asks you a question. Make sure you look her in the eye and tell her thank you. If he or she compliments you at a camp, make sure you say thanks, coach, so that she knows that you're listening. Nod your head yes, okay? Whether you agree or not, nod your head yes, okay? At the end of the camp, you want to be the last person to leave, okay? And walk up to the coach and shake her hand with a nice firm handshake and tell her, thank you, coach, that was a great camp. Look her in the eye, okay?
I start with the 10 and under players on the handshake. I really, yeah.
Great. We work on it after every practice. Every practice we have, we break. We pick someone to be the line leader. They all go through and they shake your hand and they say thank you and they look you in the eye. And if they don't look you in the eye, I always grab their hand and hold them until they look me in the eye. We have to make eye contact and then she can go. And we always laugh about it because most of the time they're pretty good, but sometimes they forget or it's just a habit. Or it's hard to make eye contact, you know. So all those things are important at camp.
Yeah, and somebody asked here what recruiting tools. Okay, so we're not gonna make this too long. Recruiting's probably gonna be a 3-week episode, I guess you would say. But let's talk about tools. I mean, camps are a recruiting tool. Okay, being with the right travel organization is a tool.
Profile sheets. That's a recruiting tool.
Right. Profile
Videos.
sheets, videos. Okay, so a lot of people say, well, I hear coaches don't like videos, or I hear they do. If a coach says they don't like a video, that's their preference. What I would say coaches probably don't like is 15-minute videos.
Right.
Okay, as a coach going through recruiting right now, shoot us a 3-minute clip. I don't care what it's done. You don't need to go out and pay a bunch of money for a video. If you want to and you have the means, I'm not saying that they're not good. All I'm saying is coaches don't need that. We really want to see 10 straight swings. I don't want to see an edited video where you hit 10 perfect line drives. It's a 3-minute or less video.
Yep.
And let's see some of the failures, okay? Because if you come to a camp, whether it's a fundamentals camp, whether it's a tryout, it doesn't matter what it is. If you're coming to anything for Premier Fast Pitch or Parkland College, we're going to put you in a situation where we know you're probably going to make a mistake and fail because we want to see how you handle it, okay? So video, I mean, it's whatever your means allow. I don't want to there's some services out there that make a living off of videos. It's not necessary, but if you want to do that, great. Same thing goes for recruiting services. I'm not saying recruiting services aren't good, okay? If you've got the means, they can certainly help. And some of you might not be with organizations that are as proactive as others, so maybe you need that. But there's also recruiting services out there that don't cost as much or anything at all.
JJ Slayback
recruiting services. But if you got the means, it's fine. I will say, I mean, as a coach, I'd certainly look at different recruiting services. The tough part, what everybody needs to understand is, even from a recruiting service side of things, either the player or the service has to be up to date too. There's so many times in the last 6 months that, I look at profiles on there and the players already recruited, or they decided they're doing something different. Well, guess what? I lose confidence in that recruiting service, and it doesn't do me any good. So I'm going to go to it less often. If anybody's out there with the recruiting service, take note of that. Because nothing more frustrating than seeing a kid, seeing their video on there. Some of the services are nice, and then all of a sudden they're already recruited. So
right.
And so
they're just not updated.
Yeah. Prospect camps. There's prospect camps, there's skills camps, and then there's,
fundamentals
school
camps.
The fundamental school camp, you're going to one school. You're going to get to interact with that coach, hopefully, if there's not 300, campers there. You go to a prospect camp, you're going to have more schools there watching. They're going to put you through drills, do some things. And then a skills camp. I mean, I recommend skills camps for
the younger ages.
Younger ages,
sure.
But even up, you want to see what level you are. I mean, like we do when we do a tryout or some different camps here where we're getting times or speeds, we'll let players know this is how you stack up versus the average. So that can kind of maybe tell you, hey, that kind of lets me know versus these type of athletes where I fit in at. So, all these different things that you can do from a recruiting standpoint.
Hey, I just thought of something really funny. Back when my daughter was going through the recruiting process, it was before we had DVDs. And so I burned like 5 or 6 cassette tapes.
VHS.
VHS tapes.
And mailed them to him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
There's
Yep.
probably
Did
some
that.
Oh, how it's changed.
I know.
kids watching right now that don't even know what a VHS
I
tape
know.
is.
That's I asked him the other day. Where was I at? Oh, it was at team practices yesterday. A TV stat with the dial on there, because I kept telling him adjust a little bit. Adjust. And they're like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
JD said, "What about social media?" Okay, I just watched an awesome video by Larissa Andrews at Mizzou, and she talked about social media, and that it's the first place she goes to look at an athlete. Okay, she's going to look at their Facebook, their Twitter, their Instagram, their MySpace, whatever they have. Okay, she's going to go out Snapchat. She's going to have someone get out there and do some research and dig up all the dirt they can find on these kids. They want to know that you're a good member of the community, that you're doing the right thing, okay, that you are, your language is appropriate, there's no foul language, how do you treat your family. A lot of those things you can figure that out real quick on social media, just by some of the things that kids are posting. What kind of pictures did they post? Sometimes, and this is getting hairy here, but what are they wearing in the pictures? What are they doing in the pictures? All those kinds of things matter. You got to be smart about what you're posting, okay? And our rule has always been, if you don't want your grandma to see it, then you definitely don't want a college coach to see it. So, that's really important. Make sure that your social media is clean, professional, especially if those are the kind of opportunities that you're looking for. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you should put in a college email. Emails are so important, as well as picking up the phone and calling, okay? But some kids just don't know what to say in the email, okay? What I would say is you don't want it to be a 10-paragraph email, because these coaches get hundreds and hundreds of emails every day, and they need something short, quick, to the point that they can respond to or take note of if they can't respond, okay? But they don't have time to sit there and read 10 paragraphs about a kid and all of their accolades and things like that. So a couple things that you want to make sure you have in your email, okay? You're always going to say, "Dear Coach," and make sure you have the correct coach's name, okay? I would always recommend sending it to the head coach and one or two of the assistant coaches, because at some schools, the head coach might answer all of those recruiting emails, and at some schools, it's the assistant coach, and if they don't get to it, sometimes they forward it on, sometimes it gets missed. So if you're sending it to coaches at that school, then you're ensuring that somebody at that school is going to see that email, okay?
And oftentimes one of the coaches will be listed as the recruiting coordinator.
Right.
Still send it to the head coach also, though.
Yeah. So make sure you get all the coaches in there, okay? You're going to let them know, "My name is so-and-so, and I am a class of, blah, blah, blah," so they know what year you're graduating, okay? Let them know where you're from, what high school you go to, okay, and what travel team or organization that you play for, okay? They need to know what position you play, okay, what skills you have, what's your number, so when they watch you play, they can find you easily, okay? You need to make sure you include your contact information, your phone number, your email address, okay?
Don't forget your phone number. I get emails a lot from recruits. And
how
they
can
don't
I
put their phone
contact
number
her?
in there. So,
Right.
We have email address, but I guess I'm a little old school. Talking on the phone means a lot. So
make sure that you include your coach's contact information, or your advocate, or your references, okay? Leave their contact information, their name, their email, their phone number, okay? And then something that's going to make you stand out, okay? What are you going to bring to that school? Why should they recruit you, okay? You need to be specific, but let them know something unique about you so that they remember you, because it's all about keeping your name in front of them as much as possible. So whether a coach is sending email, you're sending email constantly, the more they see that name, the more they're going to remember it. And when you say something flashy like, "I'm going to bring speed to your team, and I'm really hard, whatever it is, something unique about you, okay, it's going to make them remember you. Make sure that you include your schedule, okay? Always attach your schedule so they know what tournaments you're playing in, okay? If you have your schedule for each tournament, Okay, you could send that before every tournament with your schedule for the weekend. Okay, we're playing in this pool, at this field, at this time. Okay, so they know that. If you have a skills video, attach that link, whether it's a YouTube video or a video file, whatever it is. Attach that. If you have something like that, you can send. And even if it's just a 30-second clip of your hitting, if you're showcasing yourself or your skills as a hitter, okay, that's all you need to show them. Okay, they're going to come watch you, because nobody's ever recruited a kid based off of watching them one time on a skills video. Okay, what happens is they're going to spark their interest, and they're going to say, okay, this kid's now on my radar. Now I need to try to get him to camp. I need to try to find out more about them. I'm going to contact their coach, okay? I'm going to go watch them play. All those things are going to happen after they see that video if they see something they like. They're not going to just watch that video 1 or 2 times and say, I think I'll offer that kid a scholarship.
Not very often.
It may happen.
It could happen.
Who knows? This kid would have to have a really good video and be a stud.
We have had some kids get recruited to D1 schools that they've never seen a live game before. They've just seen them at a camp.
Yeah. That has happened. And one last thing, when you're closing your email, okay, always make sure that you include your name, your graduation year, your number, all your contact information. But if you say something like, Go Panthers, make sure that goes with the right school, okay? Because we get a lot of kids that'll copy-paste. Once they get a good email typed out and written up, they're going to copy-paste it and then just change the names and the school. And you better make sure that you have the right names going to the right school, because that'll be the first first name they mark off that list if you get the wrong name.
Your email will certainly look a little better if you do research on that school, more, even beyond what the mascot is. Do some research about the coach or something, where they played. Some research that sets it apart and makes it more personal.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Certainly helps.
So emails. Okay, the more emails you send out, the more you get your name out in front of those coaches. Send them with videos, send them with your schedules, have your coaches send them, everything that you can.
And
Okay.
I think everybody needs to keep in mind, though, even if you do all this correctly and right, you still have to have patience.
Yes.
And don't take it personally. If a coach, doesn't get back to you right away, they don't happen to have an interest in you, do not take it personally.
Right. You got to understand, they're looking at hundreds of kids every year, okay? And they may only be recruiting to fill 2 or 3 spots, 2 or 3 openings for that team that year, okay? So a big school is going to look at, are you the best kid on your high school team? Are you the best kid on your travel team? Okay. Are you the best kid or best athlete in your state? Because that coach can look at athletes in all 50 states. Okay. So there's a lot of kids out there looking for those opportunities. And just because they don't recruit you doesn't mean that you're not good enough to play at that level or at that school. Okay. It just might not be what they're looking for that year. Okay. They have to fill certain roles every year so that they make sure they have every position covered, okay? And if they're only recruiting a catcher and a outfielder and you're a pitcher, then who am I kidding? Who's not recruiting pitchers, right? But you got to understand that, and like she said, don't take it personally, okay? And remember, coaches' jobs are to get you in front of coaches, okay? It's our jobs as travel coaches to get you out there in front of coaches, okay? In the right tournaments, on the field, okay? We have to prepare you and make sure you're prepared when the opportunity comes up to play in front of a coach, okay? But we can't make a coach want to recruit you, okay? You've got to put the time in. You've got to put the work in. You've got to be proactive. You've got to make yourself stronger. You've got to have those intangibles that they're looking for, got to have good grades. All those things matter, but we can't make them recruit you. Okay.
Absolutely.
And that's the hardest part, I think, sometimes is kids say, well, I'm not recruited. They didn't do anything for me. Well, you played in front of 250 coaches in the last 2 weekends. And if they didn't see something they didn't like, then we have some work to do still, So it's important to keep that into perspective.
Fire some questions in if you have any. We've only got a couple more minutes here. Coach Nolte, You got some trivia?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh,
Oh, I
trivia.
about forgot. We got so interested in it while we were talking. Hey, a minute.
Oh. Trivia.
Trivia. All right. Tonight's trivia is, who won the first NCAA Division I championship? Who was the first team to win an NCAA Division I championship? I'll give them a couple minutes to
While
determine
we're
that.
waiting on that, I do want to just reach out and say a few words with our heartfelt condolences to the Glasgow family. Jerry Ann Glasgow, daughter of Jerry Glasgow, was killed in a car accident earlier this week or last week. And for those of you in the softball community, you certainly know this family. And, personally, I did not know Jerry Ann, but I know Jerry, and I know one of Jerry Ann's sisters. So, the softball world is a small world, really. It's a big world, but it's a small world. So, just want to give our condolences to the Glasgow family.
Yeah, it's very terrible. Oh, we have an answer here. Leah Daly Indris. Hopefully I'm saying that right. She said UCLA.
Ding, 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 ding. That's correct. UCLA won the championship against Fresno State in 1982 with the score of 2-0.
Very good. Kelly Andrews added one more thing about emails. She said, have correct grammar, and that is a good point. Make sure you proofread before you send that out. proofread.
And
Details.
We'll wait for some questions here, but one thing we always tell parents, in the travel ball world is, do not have your kid play softball just for a scholarship. Okay, it's not about them just getting a scholarship. All the travel, the money. Remember, it's about so much more. The memories, the relationships they build along the way, the life lessons that they're going to learn, the situations that softball puts them in that prepares them for the real world. The coaches are there to make them not only better players but better people as well. So that's really what it's all about. It's an investment in your child's life, not an investment to get a scholarship at the end of the day. So far, there's not a lot of people that get to be involved and play softball for a living. Okay, so certainly, understand that it's so much more. And you always have those people that say, why do you do this in softball? Well, what else would they be doing? It's a commitment, and it's a big commitment. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of money. But guess what? It's a fun sport. It's a great sport, and it teaches so many great life lessons and makes so many memories.
I'd say it's an investment in your child's future. It's an investment in their lives, or in their character, and in their, what kind of person are they going to be? You're investing in your child, to help build their character and build who they're going to be in the future. And all these things are going to help them along the way. Whether they play softball for 4 years in college or 2 years, or they don't play softball in college at all. If they play all the way up to their senior year of high school because they love the game and it teaches them a lot about life, and they're getting so many things out of it, and they're learning how to manage their time and just become a better person. That's what it's all about, That's really the important thing. So... All right.
Well,
no
more
more questions
came in. We will be back in a week.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep. Check back next week with us. We're going to continue the recruiting talk, and we'll touch more on some skills videos, what to include in those, recruiting services. We'll talk a little bit about that, how to set up a visit and what to do on a college visit, how to maintain contact with the coach once you've initiated that, new recruiting rules, okay? The portal, that's a big one.
And the portal.
Yeah,
infamous
it's
portal.
crazy.
We'll talk a little bit about Oregon.
Yep.
Okay. A lot going on with Oregon.
And how the parent can affect the recruiting process, what to do as a parent, and what not to do, how to let your kid handle things on their own. And then we'll talk a little bit about recruiting etiquette 101. We talked a little bit about that earlier.
Yeah.
If you guys have any other ideas or questions or comments or things you want to hear about or talk about when it comes to recruiting, make sure you shoot us a message and let us know, and we'll make sure we get that on our next video. But we'll be talking about this for a few weeks, so thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Fast Pitch Huddle fans, remember, strive to be 1% better in the game of softball and the game of life. And always remember to respect the game. Thank you. Over and out.